This podcast is all about getting divorced without losing your mind, where Corey Shapiro, a seasoned New York City divorce attorney, shares valuable insights from his book, Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind. He'll teach you how to be more creative and less reactive in your divorce. He also dives into discussions with experts and thought leaders on navigating divorce intelligently and calmly.
Welcome back to Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind. I am Corey Shapiro. This is a podcast and also a book about helping you get divorced without losing your mind. And this podcast, we work on the divorce. Okay, and I want to make this clear. When I say working on your divorce, what I mean is we're taking a step back. We're not in the trenches like you are with your attorney if you're in that process now. We're thinking of strategy. We're thinking of vision. We're thinking of choices that we're making. That's all the pre-work you need before you hire an attorney or you're working with an attorney to achieve your objective. Let's just think of it another way. I'm all the pre-work you would do before you build the kitchen. All that thinking, all that designing. Think of your attorney as that contractor. They're actually doing it, right? But we're the architect. The contractor does the job and the architect comes up with the plans. Now, you could say, of course, your attorney can do both. But the more insight you can bring to this process, especially under such a stressful situation, especially when you're really uncomfortable on so many levels, the better it's going to be. So that's what we are doing on this podcast. And this episode in particular is the last of 5 episodes where we're discussing this topic about focusing on clear strategy. It comes from chapter 3 of my book right there. And we started off, just as a little bit review, we started off with prepare for the long war. We talked about this resisting this internal pressure, that internal pressure and external pressure to just act. We talked about when you're not feeling confident. Last week, we talked about resolve not to escalate. And now we're talking about do nothing. And you might be thinking, do nothing. Why are we going to have a podcast about that? That is so easy. Well, for those people who are thinking that, this podcast is really for you, because it's not do nothing where you just want to chill. It's doing nothing where you have a compulsion. Right now I'm actually transitioning off caffeine for 2 weeks. No caffeine, no coffee. And what do I think about every second of the day? Coffee. I have a compulsion for coffee. Can't have it this morning. This is Memorial Day weekend. No coffee. So it's hard to do nothing. And that's what this podcast is about. But before we get into doing nothing, let's talk about our quote, okay? And it comes from A.A. Min. And it goes like this. Don't underestimate the value of doing nothing, of just going along, listening to all the things you can't hear and not bothering. That quote really reminds me of such a key because it's saying what you can't hear. What you can't hear. Now, let me just take a aside here. I have clients where I literally hire experts in their field and they don't listen to these experts. So for example, let's say you're valuing your house and you get an appraiser and you don't like the value of the appraiser. So what most people would do is you get a second appraiser, right? But you still don't like the opinion of the second appraiser because really in your mind, you have this certain value, you have a certain belief what it's worth, and no one's going to change your mind. And that is what this is about. So they actually, smarter people than me, I guess, came up with a 4-part framework for this. And I loved it when I learned this. So the first part is when you're unconscious, you don't know, incompetent. So you don't know what you don't know. I think that's a lot of people going through this process. Just for me, if I was going to build a kitchen, what do I know about building a kitchen? I don't know anything. I don't know where things have to be. I don't know all the shapes and sizes. Other people do this often, know these things. So you're just, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. Second stage is when you're conscious. I know I don't really know how to build a kitchen, but you're still incompetent. Third stage is getting interesting. It's where I'm conscious and I'm competent. That's where you have to think about it. It's not natural. I see that generally when we shift from people who have a toxic communication pattern. You see that when you have a toxic communication pattern, which I have had for many years, and then you change. But it's not comfortable changing because you want that last word, right? You're used to escalating, you're used to pushing buttons. So it's hard to change that. And then you get to a point where I think I'm at on some levels, but it takes so much time and effort, is when it's unconscious, but you're really competent. So this is like, we have the French Open right now. When these people are hitting the ball, you think they're thinking. I don't even know what they're actually thinking about, but they don't have to think about what they're hitting. Their body does it because they've done it so often. That is the highest level we're dealing with. All right, so let's just roll into this idea of doing nothing. And I want us to think about something to just bring it down to a divorce world, okay? And where can you be, I'm just trying to think of where you can be really compulsive about something. And I think that framework from that quote really hits the nail on the head, because here's the problem. Your position, so let's make this simple. Let's say we're talking about that house evaluation. You don't agree with both those experts who evaluated your house. You have a certain position in mind. That position might be just acting out. Okay, let me go through that again. So let's say you believe your house is worth $1 million. Okay, you believe your house is worth $1 million. The first expert came in and said it's worth $750. And you're like, that's ridiculous. It's not worth $750. It's worth $1 million. Get another expert. So you get another expert. The other expert, maybe they come up to $800, but you're not satisfied. You wouldn't be satisfied with that, right? But here's the point. Your $1 million might be you just acting out. And it might not even be what you think it's about. It might not be about the money. It might not be about the house. You know what it might be about? Might be about a lack of respect, a lack of being treated fairly, some type of calculation in your mind of valuing what you're worth. And it's expressed through that position, through that $1 million. And a lot of the work I do with my clients, when I'm not doing this podcast on Friday mornings, is work through that. Why is that position so important to you? And is there another way to achieve that position? So when I say doing nothing, and you have this idea of, valuing your home, and you have two experts, can you just end it? Now, I'll tell you what happens. Let's say you can't end it. I can't do nothing, Corey. I read your book. I'm not doing it. I want to do something. Okay, fine. You want to do something? You go to court, and the judge will say, well, what did the neutral expert, that first expert? A lot of times when you go to court hires, in most cases, a neutral expert. Both people agree on it, saves money, saves time. You get an expert. And the judge is like, well, the expert came in at $750, Your Honor. And the judge is like, okay, so what's the problem? Well, my client doesn't believe it's worth $750. He thinks it's worth $1 million. And the judge is like, okay, well, does he have his own expert? Yes, he does. And what does his own expert say? $800? Okay, so the judge is going to say, well, here, this is the fast way. I don't want to waste my time with a trial over this. Why don't we just sell the property? Why don't we just sell the property? And whoever buys it, that will be the price. Is that okay with you, sir? You're like, okay, judge, that's actually not a bad idea. Thank you. I appreciate that. Fine. But here's the problem. Remember, you want $1 million. You go to the broker's like, hey, it's really about 750, 800,000. That's what it is. And that's what they're probably going to list it for. So you'll have all these fights. And if you bring it back to the court can then order a certain sales price. They're not going to leave it open-ended. They're going to base it on reality, not on your fantasy of $1 million. Because now we have the first expert, the second expert, and the broker all thinking it's worth about the same. So if you just did nothing and just realize that maybe this position I'm taking is not really what I think it's about. Maybe it's about something else. If you can just stop right there, just stop right there. And then really don't talk to your divorce lawyer. Don't talk to your divorce lawyer. And this is what I want you to do. I want you to first start journaling it and thinking why this position is so important to you. And then what I want you to do is and do that for like a week, 5 minutes a day. I'm not asking you for the whole day, just 5 minutes a day, journal. You can do it. You have enough time. And then you're going to start realizing that it might not be about what you think it's about. And if you don't believe that, then what I want you to do is a second level. I would love it if you talk to a therapist on this issue and just express what I just said. Just say, hey, listen, I think it's $1 million. Whatever your position is, the experts say it's not, but I feel in my blood it is. And let me just make this as a relate to the something personal where I couldn't do nothing, where I should have done nothing. I was invited to a wedding in Italy during COVID. And my my wife, girlfriend at the time, not even a fiance, but she was my girlfriend at the time. She was the maid of honor. Can't get out of it. And I was totally against having a destination wedding in Italy during COVID. Unnecessary, total luxury. Have it here. They're not from Italy. They're from actually New York, where I live, where their parents are. Let's have it here. And the real concern I had is, you remember during COVID where if you tested positive, you couldn't come back, and then you had to stay there for 2 weeks to quarantine, which I heard people had problems. So I was stressed, was going to, ruin my business, ruin my life. And I literally had to go to a therapist who helped me through this. And if I just did nothing, and if I just supported, which after all those sessions with my therapist, that's what really the answer was, it's supporting. That was really the most important thing, supporting my girlfriend in her friend's wedding, where she has the honor of being the maid of honor. If I just did that, I would have had such less grief, but I couldn't see it. Using that from that quote, I was unconscious. I was incompetent and unconscious to the reality. And I rose up and I realized, oh, I see. It's not really about the practical risk of being excluded from coming home for 2 weeks with all that cost, all that uncertainty. It was really only about supporting my girlfriend. That's really what it's about. And likewise, you might have that type of realization that your position is not really what you think it's about. And that might give you an ability to change your position, which may help you save your budget, save your time, save your energy, save your money, save your emotion, and then you can move on to a better post-divorce life. So as you can see, doing nothing sometimes is hard. It's hard. I got it. It's hard. But sometimes it's the best answer, especially where you feel so strongly, such a compulsion. So I hope this insight was helpful. And just one note I want to, if you're still thinking, you know what, okay, I hear you, and I didn't bring it to another context, but some people, this is what they do. Some people say, okay, I can do nothing, but maybe if I just, especially I see this on text or emails or even on social media, if I just look a little, I'm not going to really respond. I'm just going to read. I'm just going to see the text, but I wouldn't even do that, because seeing a text or an email that's coming from maybe your soon-to-be ex, maybe on a Friday before a 3-day weekend, or from your attorney, it's just going to trigger you. It's going to be that much harder. So, for example, this weekend, when everyone's drinking coffee tomorrow morning, I'm not going to be around them because I'm not there yet, because I'm just new to not having coffee. So don't let that energy burn through you. I would do something else, which I will do. I will take my dog outside and we will play fetch. Okay, so let's end this with my getting divorced without losing your mind question. What rituals will you do to supplant your compulsion to do something when you're supposed to be doing nothing? Okay, next time we're gonna move away from this topic, and we're going to talk about a 5-part series on becoming less defensive and more understanding. And that's really the key to the secret sauce. And the secret sauce is, I'm baby stepping you there, is to Become persuasive. That's really the secret sauce of all this. All this is really about becoming more persuasive, more of getting what you want, but in a different way. So listen, I thank you all for tuning in, for listening, to do the hard work, for working on your divorce, not in it. And I want to make clear, you guys who are going through this divorce, not your attorney, not the judge, not me, are the hero. You're the hero in your journey. And no one can really help you except yourself, but you can have really good guides. You could, and that's the key here. You have to have really good guides like mentors and professionals. And I'm just a guide, a resource to help you through that journey in a much better way. Just like if I was, redoing my kitchen cabinets, I guess my uncle-in-law, I'm not even sure if that's a word. That's what he does professionally. So he could do it in a weekend. I probably couldn't even do it in a year. And if I did it, it wouldn't even work. So that's the whole key here you got to find a good guide. I'm glad you turned into this podcast. And if you are following along with the book, please send me some feedback. You can send it at feedback@gettingdivorced.org. And if you have a question for this podcast and you just want to, express what's going on and any topics we've raised in this book or something that you think hasn't been covered in the book should be covered, ask us a question at question.gettingdivorced.org. Remember, be creative, not reactive, and that will help you not lose your mind in your divorce.
Thank you for tuning in to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. We would love to hear your feedback. Send Corey an email to feedback@gettingdivorced.org. And if you've read his book, please consider leaving an Amazon review. This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.